Welcome back. Just a quick reminder that I have a few slots available for chess lessons. You can find out more on chessopenings.com/lessons. Welcome back to chessopenings.com. In today's video, we'll take a look at a very brief blitz game that I lost relatively quickly, but in the process, we'll get to see some very good technique on the part of my opponent. Let's take a look. Welcome back to chessopenings.com. In today's video, we'll take a look at a blitz game that I played on the Internet Chess Club, that's chessclub.com, against a player rated about the same as my rating under the handle Tasmanian Devil. And this was played as part of a set of games that I prepared specifically for these video lessons. Now, my opponent was white, and he began with the move pawn to e4, pawn to e5, and knight to f3. And now, unfortunately, rather than playing the typical move knight to c6, which is what I intended, I immediately made a mouse slip and played the move pawn to c6. And this is just a terrible move. Now, white has two ways to gain an advantage right away. He can capture on e5, and then I'd play queen e7, knight f3, queen takes e4, bishop e2. This definitely allows white an advantage because he's already one step away from castling, another step away from a move like knight to c3. White is doing rather well here, and black will be facing some problems at some point along the road simply because he's so far behind in development. But instead, my opponent played another move which is just as valid. He played pawn to d4, pawn takes pawn on d4, and queen takes d4, taking advantage of the fact that I can't strike the queen with knight to c6, and I say because over time I'm going to really regret having a weakened square on d5, which can be occupied with the queen or the knight, and the bishop can come out to c4 in those cases. So instead, I played the move pawn to d5, as the move knight to f6 is already uncomfortable because of bishop to g5 or pawn to e5. One or both of those moves would be challenging. So instead, I played pawn to d5. He played knight to c3, and now probably still under the spell of my opening mistake, instead of playing knight to f6, which leaves black with a slight disadvantage, but perhaps will be more playable, I instead played the move pawn takes pawn on e4, and after the exchange of queens and knight takes e4, black again has actually made his problems much worse. It's not easy for black to get a serious development going here because he can't play king to d7, which would be a nice way to start evacuating the king from the center, because the move bishop to f4 check will draw the king back out into the open, and there's no possibility of interposing on d6 as the knight already covers that square. And so, for example, if I play bishop to e7, white can bring out bishop f4. Let's assume that bishop e6 check is played, castles with check, knight d7, knight to d4. This is just a very, very ugly position for black. The rooks are never going to get consolidated. There's going to be some real structural damage and probably the loss of a bishop pair. And it's not going to be long even before this knight might pop into d6 here. And I'm just not a big fan of this position at all. Far-ranging consequences for these two mistakes, pawn to c6 and d takes e4. So queen takes d8, king takes d8, knight takes e4. I played bishop f5, at least trying to generate a little threat here. But it turns out that white can probably play knight to e5 if he's really on the top of his game here, because now after knight takes e4, knight takes f7, king to e8, knight takes h8. The question is, can he evacuate the knight from the h8 square? And through some analysis, it appears that white is probably going to be able to get this knight out with bishop to c4 at the right moment. Though it will take some doing on his part, there's every reason to believe that white already has a significant advantage. But instead, white continued with bishop to d3. I inserted this check, bishop b4 check, c3, bishop to e7. Bishop to f4 was still played, and again, the game is going in the direction that I expected, that pretty soon after castles check, this is going to be a bad position. So the game continued, knight d7, castles, and already, again, the move, let's say knight to g5 is being threatened here with exchange of bishops, rook takes d3, pressure on d7. So white castled. I played pawn to g6. Knight to d4 was played. Again, very strong move by white. Bishop takes e4. Bishop takes e4. Knight g to f6. And it almost looks like I've managed to eliminate my problems. But in fact, my opponent finds an excellent combination. He plays bishop takes c6, exclamation point. B takes c6. Knight takes c6 check. King to e8. And now rook h to e1. So white has captured 2 pawns in exchange for the piece. There's no way for me to avoid losing the piece on e7. And to make matters worse, I simply played king f8. He took, and I simply resigned the game, because I also have to worry now about bishop h6 check or bishop to d6. I'm down 2 pawns. I'm just not feeling very good about this. My knights are stuck to each other. My rooks are not together. My chances of defense are very small. Perhaps I could continue with king to g7, but I just wasn't feeling it today, and the move pawn to c6 was a mouse slip. For instructive value, this game still gives us a little bit of something. I like the way white handled this position after he played d2 to d4, made the exchanges of pawns in the center, castled quickly, played bishop f4 quickly. All some really nice play by Tasmanian Devil in this game, and a good example of what happens after the move pawn to c6. I don't suspect that many players are going to be seeing the move pawn to c6, but there may be opportunities to play the kind of plan and setup that white had in this game. In any case, this was part of a set of 10 games that I played for the express purpose of these videos, so I decided to keep the video and share it with all of you, and I hope you found something of use throughout this video. That's all for today, and we'll see you again soon. Before you go, be sure to check out the 2 applications we have available for the King's Indian Defense, available for iPhone and for Android.